Hello, I'm Mindy Wheat, the reading specialist here at the Classical Academy in Escondido, and I have some tips I want to share with you about teaching letters. No matter the age of your student, it is very important that they have a very clear understanding of articulation and formation of letters in order to master the symbols of our language. So I want to clarify some of the stuff to make sure you guys are teaching them in a very cool and fun way. I have seen this stuff in my training through Orton Gillingham programs, and I have also seen it embedded in Linda Mood Bell and in speech pathology programs. So it is really cool for some kids that really struggle with letters, and it's also awesome and great for kids that are just in the regular classroom. I want to first focus on articulation. Whenever I define things with kids, I usually add hand movements to get the kinesthetic and visual kids engaged. So it's not only auditory definition. So for example, my definition of vowels is that every vowel, your mouth is open and voiced. And I teach them about being voiced, that it sounds kind of like your voice is on, but it feels like a purring kitten, or maybe a car motor that's on. If you're touching the hood of the car, it vibrates like that. And so we practice saying all the vowels and feeling our voice vibrate. So like ah, ah, and we could feel it vibrating. Vowels are also continuant, meaning the sound can go on and on and on, like ah. It doesn't stop by something blocking it. Consonants, on the other hand, I define them by saying consonants are blocked or partially blocked by the tongue, teeth, or lips. And then we go through and talk about what is blocking them. Is it the tongue, like in or is it the teeth, like in s, or the lips, like in or is it a partial sound, or partially blocked by the tongue, like in Y, where it makes the y? It's blocked, and then it drops down and is unblocked. Or the P is partially blocked by the lips because it's bursting open, so I also talk to kids a little bit about cognates. This is a really cool lesson in Lexia, and they talked about the cognates of the letter, where the lips are making the same sound, but the only difference is one letter is voiced and one letter is unvoiced. So, p, unvoiced, b is voiced. So it's a cool thing to check with your kids. Can they figure out which one's voiced and unvoiced? T, unvoiced, d, voiced. Unvoiced, voice. Lips and mouth are doing the exact same thing. Really helps clarify with kids if they can do one letter very clearly but they can't do the other. I just say it's just like this, it's just voice. So like a Z, for example. K, G, that one's voiced. S, unvoiced. Z, you're turning on your voice, it's starting to vibrate. Ch, J. There's also some letters that are known as nasal sounds because the sound is coming out the nose. If you were saying the sound and you plugged up your nose when you're saying it, kids love doing that. They think it's hilarious that they can't say the sound when the nose is plugged. But that's why this one has pictures of noses, because that's where the sound is actually coming. Same with and this sound, it's very similar. They're both being blocked by the tongue, but the difference with this one is not only is your mouth open a little bit more, it's kind of hard to tell in this picture, but the tongue is being blocked, and it's actually rolling to the back of your mouth. So again, we talk about that. I have kids look in the mirror and watch themselves. We roll our heads back and make sure the tongue's dropping in the back. Another thing that's kind of tricky, these are the three ones that usually often send kids to speech, especially the L's and the R's. And it's because they're a sliding, rolling tongue that deals with the L sound. It's kind of like a weird shape that your tongue makes, and where it actually is placed in the top of the mouth is a little tricky. But talking to kids about that, like in S, that the teeth are together, but what is your tongue doing behind that? That's kind of tricky as well. Or D and T, where the tongue's dropping, but what part of the tongue is dropping? Do you ever realize that? That for some kids, they don't realize that it's the actual tip of the tongue that's dropping. So all of that really helps kids articulate letters better and understand the difference between different letters. talking about voiced and unvoiced, or if a letter is open, or if a letter is blocked or partially blocked. So again, we divide them into consonants and vowels. We divide them into voiced and unvoiced, and we divide them and talk about which ones are blocked or partially blocked. Another thing that we talk about with, or I talk about with kids, is the actual formation of letters. Kids need to be able to form letters clearly so that they're not getting, so that they're getting a very firm, clear picture in their mind of what a letter looks like. If kids are making them different all the time, or if they're really sloppy, it really hurts their letter sound correspondence. So for example, I group letters into 4 categories. Letters that can be written that start with a C, that start like an L, that start like a dash in the direction we read and write, or start like a slide going down. And so if a kid can make those 4 symbols, then they can make all the letters, or they can get the correct approach stroke, the first start stroke in all of the print letters. And I really teach a continuous stroke. There are a lot of programs out there that teach different methods, and they, for example, make a B and a D, a line, and a circle. A line and a circle. And I can't tell you how many times I see kids staring at a line trying to figure out which way to put the circle on. They can't figure out which side it goes on, and it's always just different, and it's just a blob and a blur to them. They're not clear on that, and so this really helps. So by having different strokes is very helpful for those letter reversals and all those flipped letters. And continuous strokes help just because it helps get them ready for cursive, and it also helps clarify letters so there's not all this, like, this dash, this line, this circle. So, for example, a D is a continuous stroke because if you start like a C and you continue up and you continue back down without ever lifting up the pencil, that's a continuous stroke. This is not a continuous stroke, if that makes sense why I'm calling them a continuous stroke. So now let's do all the letters that start like a C. So the letter A starts like a C, and then up and down. The letter C, of course, starts like a C. The letter D, around, up, and down. And I verbally say these again and again so it becomes like a mantra to the kids. The letter F starts like a C because it's going in that same counterclockwise direction, but you just drop it straight down. This one you do lift up and cross because that's just in the stroke. Another letter that starts like a C is a G. It's a round, up, and then put a tail on it. The other next letter in order is an O, just around. A Q is also starting like a C. It goes around, up, and down, and you. I'm my best friend. I always have them say that because I'm trying to teach them that a Q goes and points to his best friend. He goes, you, I'm a best friend. And that way they can tell the difference between a G and a Q because I don't want them to get the 2 directions of it confused. And I also encourage them, if you go curved, it's totally fine too. But they need to be pointing to you. I'm a best friend. So U does not start like a C, but I always write them together just because they are seen together. So now all the letters that start like an L are the letters B, down, up, and around. These letters that start like an L just do a drop down. That's the main key on them. The next letter is H. The next letter is I. J. Even though it has like a tail at the bottom, it's still starting like an L because it's doing a straight drop down. H, I, J, K, L. Sorry about the phone in the background if you heard that. H, I, J, K, L, M starts like it. Down, up and over, up and over. Or sometimes I call it a mountain and a mountain. N and a mountain. A P P starts like an L. I'm going to move this. So down, up, and around. An R, a T, and cross, and a U, down, and down. And those are all the letters that start like an L. And I hope you notice that B and D are not on the same group. They don't start the same way. A D starts like a C, and a B starts like an L. And that really helps kids clarify the differences between the two letters that are often confused. Same with P and Q. They are not on the same ones. P starts like an L, and a Q starts like a C. And that gives them a very huge difference in the formation, making it a little bit more tangible than a stick and a circle. And where in the world does the circle go on that stick? The next one is the ones that go on a dash in the direction we read and write. And this is just two letters. It's E, Z. And once you figure that out, it's easy to remember. So Z's are often flipped. It's a letter we don't write that often, and kids sit there and try and figure out which direction do I go. Once they start going in a direction, they know how to make the letter. They just don't know which way to start the letter. So the direction we read and write, go towards the next letter. And you got those two letters. The last set of letters are ones that start like a slide, as though you're going down a slide, and that would be, of course, V, W, X, and Y. And if you noticed, I only wrote lowercase letters because perfecting and working on lowercase letters is essential, because that is about 80% of what kids read and write. So I really want to make sure that they can write those clearly and perfectly. Uppercase letters tend to have a lot more straight lines and are a little bit clearer to kids. Most of the confusion comes from the lowercase, as seen with B, D, P, and Q. One of my nemesises. So anyways, I hope that made sense. Really focus on the articulation, what kids are doing with their mouths, their tongue, their teeth, their lips, their throat with the voice in relation to letters. And also make sure you're teaching them a continuous stroke and making letters seem very different when you're forming them to help kids with letter reversals, give them a solid sound letter correspondence so that when you're teaching them sounds, they have a solid understanding of a letter. So it's not like a letter in a fog where it's just an unclear thing for them. So thanks for listening. I know this was kind of long, but again, thank you.